All right, Shannon Vlogs number 67 with a book to film club challenge book with Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Okay, folks, this was the September choice for the 2015 book to film challenge, and I finished it in October. It took me a couple more days, but I did finish it in good enough time. I think in good enough time. And I am happy to say that I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I don't know what I was expecting. I guess I was kind of expecting it to be like Dracula for some reason, because the films are so closely associated, but the books are so different. I could never make it through Dracula. I was taken in by Frankenstein right away. It is very accessible, has some, has a fair amount of big words, and it's very, I found it accessible. I didn't find it hard to understand what was going on. It is very eloquently written and possibly like one of, if not the most beautiful book in terms of the writing that I've ever read. I was like just absolutely beside myself. Like, and I wasn't expecting that because it's like I know Frankenstein, my familiarity with Frankenstein is the films. This is so different than the sort of regular interpretations or the most common interpretations of the film, like the Boris Karloff one. Like very little, very, very, very little to do with the films. But before I get too sidetracked into that kind of stuff, I will say it's also one of the books on the Those Books challenge. So it actually, I think it's my 13th, I think. And it's on that challenge for being the 91st of the favorite novels of librarians, 171 on the BBC Big Read, and it's on Book Riot's 0 to well read list, which makes it on 3 lists, which is almost all the lists. There's only 5, and none of them are on 5 because one of them is Canadian, and none of the Canadian ones are on all the others. Although *Handmaid's Tale* is close. Anyway, so I was really happy to get one of those books read too because it's been a while. And the basic, what is basically about is a doctor who's pushing the limits of science and wants to. He actually, I think his goal really is to sort of prolong life and therefore creates or investigates or pursues life after death and creates a monster, a fiend, an abomination, which, sure, yeah, like I'm sure basically people have an understanding of that part of it, but a lot of it is really about Victor Frankenstein, who is the doctor who creates the monster. Although this one did have a lot from the perspective of the monster, or they mostly call him a fiend is the term that they usually use, but it's so much more eloquent and so much more human and so much more like defied all the expectations that I had of it. Like it's so much about, I don't know, like I would say it's more the general theme of the book is that you can't undo the things that you've done, and trying to live with that, and the things that happen because of the things you've done. For me, that's sort of more of the theme of the book, even though it's not really the plot of the book, but it's sort of not, and I was going to say ramifications, and that is the truth, but it doesn't always have to be negative, I guess, mostly it is. But not only for Frankenstein, but also for the fiend. Like the things that you do, you can't undo them. Like they are now a part of your life. They are now a part of the world. And that's like such a bigger, more interesting question than just like, monster. And like I like monster movies. I watch a lot of monster movies. I don't read a lot of monster books. I don't read a lot of horror. Technically, I would put this in gothic because it is that combination of horror and romance. There's some romance in the book, but it's more the idea of romance, the pursuing something, the pursuing an idea, the creation, that kind of stuff. So for me, it gets in gothic for that. And I think easily it is my favorite of the 2015 choices, although the story of your life is very close and The Martian is very close, but this is definitely my favorite and I think the best written. I didn't finish Far From the Madding Crowd. I should really try that one again. It was too hard. It was just way too hard when I started to read it. So it's weird because I feel like I don't have too much to say about Frankenstein because mostly I loved it. It was so eloquent. It was so beautifully written. I did read a fair amount of it while I was sick, which is not the best because I do feel like I missed some things because there were some things I'm like, I feel like this happened or that happened, and but I don't remember that. Like, you know, there's inference to stuff happening, and I'm like, I don't really quite remember that. You know, I don't know. And I would have to say that although most of the interpretations I've seen of this are not very close to what I got from the book, the stories and characters in Penny Dreadful, the TV series, the HBO series, I think it's HBO, is it? Is it Showtime? Here it's on HBO Canada. But that version of the stories is the closest. And I think the biggest difference, and spoilers here if you don't want to know anything more about Frankenstein the book, I'll see you later. But I do just want to say one thing that for me that was the biggest difference and made such a difference of it is that the fiend, the monster, is completely, you know, conversive. He speaks, he's eloquent, it takes some time, but like there's an entire whole part of the book of him telling his story. And in terms of structure, it was actually quite interesting because I remember when I was a kid, like early, I don't know, like 11 or something like that. I remember getting a lot of books out of the library, and one of the things that I didn't like in terms of structure is when they would start a story about 75 to 80% in, and then go back and retell what was going on, and then I felt like the only thing that was new was this little part at the end. And I'm like, Frankenstein has this structure. This book is from like 18 something. Like, it is one of the oldest books out there, first published in 1818. So I had to school my 11-year-old self that it's okay, you know, that structure isn't anything new, you know, that structure has been tried, tested, and true for years and years and years. And I did like it here. I think there was an interesting, you know, you could feel it in the sense of how someone would tell a story, because it actually is people telling the story of what happens to other people. That's actually the structure. And you lose yourself in it because they're huge chunks, because, you know, then you're listening to the story for so long, you feel like you're at that time, but the actual current time in the book is later. It's in their present, is in the future of when they're telling. I might have just gotten a little confusing there. I understood what I was saying, but I'm not sure it came out right. Anyway, the reason to read this was because there is an upcoming adaptation of Frankenstein. The film version is going to be called Victor Frankenstein. It stars James McAvoy and Daniel Radcliffe, and it is a huge departure from I've seen them interviewed, and they say it's a huge departure. Anything you expect from Frankenstein, don't expect from it. Even in the cast list, you know, James McAvoy is Victor Frankenstein, and Daniel Radcliffe is Igor, who is not a character in this book at all. Although you could he does have a sort of friend, a scientific friend. I don't know if it's modeled after him. He's not, you know, the like a helper or, you know, someone of limited, you know, means or communication. Like Igor is supposed to be the hunchback, the guy that doesn't understand, it just does stuff, and, you know, he's kind of almost a monster in himself. Is that true? I don't know. It's been a long time. I just sort of have the caricature of Igor in my head. Daniel Radcliffe's character is not like that. But there is a very interesting, from the trailers and the stuff I've seen, there's very interesting relationship between Daniel Radcliffe and James McAvoy's characters in the film. So and it's not the only adaptation coming up. There's a film version with Xavier Samuel coming up. It's festivaling right now. And there's also a Fox TV series. It was called The Frankenstein Code, and now, I'm looking at my own notes, it's called Lookinglass. So I don't know when that's coming out. I don't know if it must be mid-season because we've already started the fall season. So there are multiple interpretations and adaptations of this. I actually did watch the Kenneth Branagh version because I remember when it came out, it was very poorly received. And when I realized all of the interpretations I had seen were so vastly different, I thought, well, maybe this one is actually closer too. And it is. It's actually very close. Very, very close to the book, with some exceptions, and it does not start very well. It's very theatrical, like if you're at a play, like it's Kenneth Branagh, so of course it's going to be like that. And I actually thought Kenneth Branagh was quite good. De Niro, it was okay. I could see what it was going for, but it's hard reinterpreting the character, but they only went so far to reinterpret the character. So I thought it was okay. I thought for me, it was really great to see it after reading the book because it was so close. You know, it was nice to have that you know, that come to life, that like this story, what I felt was this story come to life. So that was nice because everything else is so different. And that's fine. Like I'm cool with different adaptations. It's just so weird when it's like, you know, the standard feels so different than the original. So anyway, it was a great read. I'd highly recommend it. If you haven't read it, I would definitely, why are you still watching? But I would definitely recommend reading it. It's much more accessible. Don't be intimidated by it. Give it a try. You might need a dictionary. There are some big words, but you know, in general, you get the gist of stuff regardless of maybe not that one affluent whatever. Like, you know, like for me it was fine. It was fine. So there we go. October done, and November book is Your Voice in My Head by Emma Forrest. It is a memoir, and I'm really looking forward to checking that out. Okay, thanks for watching.